Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
If we right our ways and we right a great wrong, then we could save her. We could save your mother, boy. People save that property. I swear it's haunted.
It's time to let the place go.
What about Paul?
An old bastard just wants revenge.
There's something he's doing. I need to wait till dark to tell you.
It's dark now.
Cover your ears, pour out a blast will ring. And when that rumbling shakes the walls, you can hear that bell sing. Son, cover your ears, pour out a blast will ring. And when that rumbling shakes,
When you run, boy,
the wall,
you run far from here.
you can hear that bell sing.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 450. Out now on Shudder is What Josiah Saw, a horror thriller that stars Robert Patrick as the patriarch of a broken family whose children suffer under the weight of a dark past that plagues them no matter where they go. A wonderfully created Southern Gothic thriller drenched in darkness, palpable in dread, and featuring terrific performances by its cast. What Josiah Saw is also the latest film from director Vincent Grashaw, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Vincent, I thank you so very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. 450. Wow, you've been doing this a minute.
Yes, sir. I think this is my, I do around 2 or 3 a week, so I think this is my second or my third this week. So it's it's very prolific on my end, but it's only so good I can do this because I can talk to filmmakers like yourself, and What Josiah Saw is like one of those films I was saying to you before recording. It's like it's just a fantastic movie. It really is really a film that kind of stayed with a lot. I think it stays with a lot of people after the credits roll. I want to go back though to when you first received that script from Robert Allen Dilts. And I believe you two both worked before on a short film called Aliki, way back like in 2009 or so. So he gets his script to you, and it's really interesting in your films. Your previous films were more kind of like socially conscious stories, where this film is like more of a Southern Gothic kind of horror movie. And I also heard that this script rattled you when you first read it. What was it about Robert's script that really had that kind of impact on you to the point where this was going to be your next movie?
Yeah, so Robert, I had met from a screenwriting website called Trigger Street back in 2007. And I had read some of his scripts and thought his writing was really unique and fresh. And we started communicating on that site, which doesn't exist anymore. It was Kevin Spacey's company, Trigger Streets. They had that like forum where you can share scripts and stuff like that. And I thought he was a really fantastic, unique voice. I hadn't directed a feature at that time, and I was on the path to try to, I guess. And in 2009, I had gone to Fiji twice, and told him when I was going to go the second time, I loved Fiji, and I saw these kids in Fiji that were fishing off of this dock, and I basically said, "Hey, can you write a short film about the folklore or something in Fiji?" He wrote me this like 10-page thing the next day. I shot it just with the camera and girlfriend at the time, and it was just for a fun hobby kind of thing. But when in 2013 I had finished my first film, Cold Water, and he started sending me this script for Josiah, and he was sending me pages at a time. It wasn't finished. He just had started it. And so it was like, I think it was 10 or 20 pages he had written and just one of my thoughts. And instantly it was sucking me into the atmosphere. I knew it wasn't something that started off with a bang, but there was something about his writing that was very atmospheric and visceral. And it really painted this sort of world without being verbose at all. So I encouraged him to writing. I was just into it. The Thomas and Josiah character in the beginning and their sort of back and forth dynamic. It was sort of a one-on-one performance piece. I didn't know where the movie was going yet. And he was really reluctant to keep going. But I kept pushing him and he kept writing. And by the time that first chapter ended, that's when I was like really rattled and unsure about it. I was questioning him as a writer at times, but that I'm like, what demons do you have going on? Because my childhood was great. I have good parents, but it was interesting at that point is because it was not even 30 pages in oh, sorry, that was a phone here. 30 in, and where it was going was really unexpected, and it shifted gears. And when that happened, I thought it was really a brilliant move because you can't maintain that first chapter's tensity the way it was. And so when he did that, and you were introduced to this other person, it was the way that it was structured that I thought was just really cool. And I'm aware it's done before. I'm aware chapters have been done before, but I was just impressed with how you felt like you were being suffocated slowly by the script. And so it was one of those things you just didn't want to stop reading, but I was uncomfortable through a lot of it. So by the time it ended, I knew I wanted to make it because I was kind of interested in doing a horror movie at that point. And this to me was just a horror movie in a different sense, because this is in 2013. So it was before a lot of the really smart, cool horror movies over the last 10 years that have been coming out, like It Follows, Babadook, The Witch, Hereditary. So I knew I was on the right track once I started seeing these kind of movies really get a voice. And so I pursued it. It took me 6 years to finally get it financed and made. And so
I wanted to talk about the Robert Patrick's character's name, Josiah. It's not a name you come across very much in movies, and it's really interesting looking at the Hebrew meaning of the name, which is God supports and heals. And anyone who watches this film knows that this Josiah does not support and does not heal. Did you talk much to Robert in regards to the why he used the name Josiah for that character, or was it just something that he thought was a cool name just for the movie?
I'm sure he has a pretty significant, deeper meaning. That guy, when it comes to anything, it is very researched and very, whether it's an allegory or all that stuff, he doesn't it's not something that's coincidence. He really thinks about and enjoys sort of tackling those things, and many themes of this movie, actually. But we didn't talk too much about the names. I mean, clearly it's Josiah, Mary, Thomas, and Eli, all sort of biblical type of names with that sort of dated aspect to them. But I just liked it that that was their names, and to me it didn't have to dive more significant than this movie has some religious undertones, and it explored that aspect, and I thought it was an interesting choice. But I didn't personally get into any deeper meaning. I knew there was deeper meanings. I'm like, that's Robert Dills, you know.
It's interesting to me when watching the film how these children, you mentioned a name, so Eli's played by Nick Storr, Thomas by Scott Hayes, Mary by Kelly Garner, how they all have an emptiness to them that they're all trying to fill with something. So Eli has drugs in his life. Thomas has religion. Mary has a need to bear a child or to raise a family. that whole thing, that aspect of an emptiness within them, is that something that you guys talked about quite a bit with these characters, where they're trying to fill a void within their life that came from their kind of like their broken family and their upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole. It's a huge theme in the movie is how trauma affects people, and especially childhood trauma. And you have these characters who had lived through some pretty horrific stuff when they were children, and we get to catch up with them 20 plus years later.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it because it showed how trauma is not cured; it's only managed, and it was important that their journeys and the way what they're trying to fill in their life is different. So Eli just wants a fresh start. I feel like he feels cursed no matter which choice he makes in life, and he's almost destined for his, what happens, everything he chooses to do. And I feel like going through that sort of thing, all this guy wants is a fresh start, and he'll do anything at that point. And Mary, for her, I think she's painted a sort of life that is safe. She almost lives in these like tract homes where every house is the same. You're sort of safe and witness protection almost. And that to me was important because you can put a facade on in any part, people on social media put the facade on every day of a great life. And she's probably guilty of that herself, marrying an older guy who can protect her, who's secure, who is supportive, and probably had to deal with a lot of her mental issues through the last 10, 20 years. And I think she knows that, especially by the time she gets reconnected with her brother, that this is something that she's only put a Band-Aid on and never really confronted it. And so it's also to how do you confront trauma in your life? Do you face it? How do you process it when it's still with you that much later? And I just think that's a fascinating way to kind of manifest horror.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. You filmed the movie in Oklahoma, and I've spoken to filmmakers from Oklahoma, and they just rave about how great it is to film there. You yourself are, from what I know of, is a Los Angeles native, but you filmed this movie in Oklahoma. What was it like working in Oklahoma with their cast and crew there for yourself? Have you done work there before? Have you kind of like known people who've worked there before? And would you go back there again?
I had not filmed there before. The rebate, the film incentive to shoot there for the finances is a really healthy, good one. So, and it really fits the tone and look of the setting that we were looking for. So it was a kind of a no-brainer. The movie was written more like a Texas, but Texas doesn't have really much of a business incentive to go there, unfortunately. So Oklahoma did, and we took advantage of that. And such a great crew, some of the best crew I've worked with. It was trench warfare, very hard because of the budget we were at, and dialed in, very excited. And some of the, like my first AC, this guy, Philip Bird, one of the best first ACs I've ever worked with, my focus puller. And so it was just within the hard stuff to get this movie executed. It was just a pleasure to work with these people that really cared, and they knew what we were doing was special. And everyone, it's a family unit. That's why I love location shoots. You really get a sense to kind of grow with the team instead of going home every day. I would shoot there again in a heartbeat if the movie sort of setting works for it.
Where did you find that house? Because that house works so well, fits these characters kind of like a glove. It really does. Where did you find that place?
Absolutely, which was kind of scary because out of all the movies I've done, this is the one that really you needed a location that was perfect for it. It's almost its own character. And there's many elements. It needed to be 2 stories. It needed to have an oak tree that kind of was ominous. It needed to look like everything was dying. It just was too perfect. It was in a location scout, basically. It was in their location scout database. And it was this old 100-plus-year-old house that nobody lived in. And there was still furniture and everything in it that we front of it, front of the movie. The guy who grew up there had another house on the property a distance away. That's where he lived. So he just had this home that was basically, we did some painting and wallpapering, and there was wasps all over the place. So we had to get a wasp exterminator, but I didn't want him to sweep away the dead wasps. So once they were all dead and they got most of them out, there was like dead wasps all over the place in the house. So I just was like, yeah, let's leave it. But it was the place you walked into and you're like, all right, stress is gone. This is the place. Something
about your movie that really affected me, and I think a lot of people when watching it, is that real kind of feeling of dread. It comes from this great cinematography that Carlos Ritter had. It comes from the great kind of sound effects, and also just there's this score from Robert Pejkovic where it just feels like doom personified. It really does. So something's going to happen. You don't know what yet. When it comes to those kind of aspects of your film, how much of that do you talk about beforehand? How much of that kind of comes in post-production? Because I'm really curious about how you create that kind of environment.
Yeah. This was one movie that the cinematography, the production design, and the wardrobe subconsciously, I think, gets people, and you really can sense it. And that's something I learned how pivotal it was, that the cinematography and even the art direction, the walls can't be a white wall. Like you need to have darker walls so the shadows sort of fall out better. Just things like that you have to all be in sync. So in pre-production, Carlos and I would spend hours together, basically shot listing, storyboarding, visuals, elements of like that throughout all of pre. I always put brain to paper way early, years ago. I do my own sort of breakdown and shot list just to get on paper. And sometimes you never use much of it, but it's just to get those creative juices going. The score, I do that also in very early pre, before I ever hire anybody. I basically build a music cue reference script. So I have like the whole script and I bold parts of the script that I feel score will be in. And I pull YouTube reference scores, pieces, cues from other movies or whatever it is. And I paste that in the script. And so the composer, whenever I hire them, I go, here's my mind in terms of the score, take this and let me know what you think. And so it's more of a blueprint on, I always found that really helpful for a composer in our relationship, because then he knows exactly what you're thinking, or she, and can run with it. And then you sort of figure it out. I knew the score was going to what bridged these chapters, sort of fuse them together outside of the story, because I knew I wanted it to be ominous and really foreshadow, like, we're going to end up in a horrific place at some point. And this is a horror movie, whether you think now you're on a crime thriller adventure or not, you're going back to that sort of unsettling place.
Well, it all comes together so incredibly well. It's, I think, one of the best films I've seen this year. I really, truly mean that. And for everyone out there listening, on Shudder right now, what Josiah Saw. This is a movie you need to watch. You need to see the craft. You need to see the performances, how it all kind of comes together. And it's really, I mean, it's weird for me to say it, considering the subject matter and the things that happen in the film, but it's quite a beautiful movie as well. I think the craft in it has just been really incredible. And Vincent, I want to say congratulations to you and best of luck with the release. And hopefully we get to talk again in the future. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and your depth and questions.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.